Hi, everyone. We'll just give a couple more minutes to let everyone join the room.
Afternoon, everybody. Welcome to our community of practice. We're just going to give folks some time just to get into the space, and we'll start shortly. But thank you for those who are joining us right on time, and we'll start very shortly. Thank you.
Give it a few more seconds. It doesn't look like there's many more people joining. Are you all able to see my screen? Okay, great. So I guess we'll get started now that it's 1:32. Okay, so good afternoon, everyone. Thank you all for joining us today. So this is the third community of practice session for the Data for Change series. And we really want this to be an interactive session today. So we're going to encourage you all to ask questions, share your experiences, and participate in the conversation today. And before we begin, we usually like to start off with the land acknowledgement. Oh, there you go. So the work of the Council of Agencies Serving South Asians takes place upon traditional Indigenous territories of the Huron-Wendat, Haudenosaunee, and most recently the territory of the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nations. This territory is part of the Dish with One Spoon Treaty, an agreement between the Anishinaabe, Haudenosaunee, and allied nations to peacefully share and care for the resources around the Great Lakes. This territory is also covered by the Upper Canada Treaties. Today, Tkaronto, the traditional Mohawk name of this area called Toronto, which means trees in the water, and its surrounding areas are still home to the Indigenous people, and we are grateful to have this opportunity to meet, work, and play on this territory as settlers. So just a brief introduction of myself, along with my colleague Gurith, as we're going to be facilitating the workshop today. My name is Rida Esker. I'm the Director of Development at the Council of Agencies Serving South Asians, also known as CASA. And I've been with the Council since 2022, and I've been supporting them through grant writing, capacity building projects, fundraising, and stakeholder engagement. And CASA has been supporting the Data for Change series through hosting these community of practice workshops. And I'm joined by my colleague Gurrit today, who is the Executive Assistant and Membership Coordinator at CASA. A little bit more about the Council of Agencies Serving South Asians. So we are a not-for-profit social justice umbrella organization, and we represent over 120 member agencies. So our aim is to build the capacity of South Asian communities through advocacy training, capacity building, as well as policy change. And we are leading projects and advocacy work related to enhancing health equity, supporting immigration and settlement, along with economic empowerment. And we partner with our member agencies and other social justice organizations across Canada to advance these strategic priorities and create meaningful systematic change. So before we dive in to some of the presentations today, I'd like to give a bit of an overview of the agenda. So now that we've done the land acknowledgement as well as our introduction, COSL will provide an overview of the Data for Change project. I will then share a reminder about the purpose of the community of practice sessions and go over some ground rules, especially for those of you joining for the first time today. And from there, we'll move on to our fireside chat with our two guest speakers from Unison Health and North York Senior Center, followed by some time for some Q&A. We'll then take a short 5-minute break, and then we'll continue with our presentations from Shippen Logical before we close out for the day. I'll now pass it on to COSL to give us an overview for the Data for Change project.
Thank you so much, Rita. It's such a full agenda today, so I won't take too much time, but just to welcome, if this year returning back to us for a community of practice, or if this is your first time, I just wanted to take a few slide decks here just to explain the overall purpose of our larger initiative called Data for Change. And so thank you so much for joining. The project has 3 folds in our project, and you see here on the slide deck, it's one to collect the social identity demographics and really have a focus on capacity building of collecting social identity data. The second is to, whenever we collect it across our sector, we know that from an advocacy stance perspective, we are able to use the data to better advance outcomes for communities, deserving communities across our city. And so really the notion here is to build capacity across all of our agencies so that we can have a better and bigger collective voice in our data. And then thirdly, to begin to socialize the data for data collection methodology and the use of tools to offer standardized tools, standardized resources and methodology across our sector, because we know that other sectors do this really well. And we are here to support the community social services sector to do it even better than we're doing it right now as a sector. Next stage, please, or slide. Our Data for Change model, if this is your first time joining us, has a three-prong model where we're all led by community-based organizations and consulting firms here to support the sector in capacity development. The focus of our work here is to provide space, provide resources, and provide knowledge and knowledge sharing of how we're all individually collecting social identity data. As we started off, the CASA here, our community partner, is leading the community of practice and convening and hosting these sessions throughout the series. We have SHIP, who has been demonstrating the way their organization has been collecting social identity data in the province and how they've been sharing their tools, resources, and knowledge around collecting social identity data. And we have Logical Outcome that's also been sharing best practices, models, and ways of thinking around collecting and social identity data. Find Help 211, which is the organization that I'm representing, hosts these sessions and works with all of our partners here to mobilize and to support the Knowledge Community Hub, which is the online platform where we collect and centralize all of the data that we're working with. We have been hosting a series of these, and as Radha had just said, we are in our 3rd phase of the community of practice. So these stages and sessions that you've been attending have been designed in a very natural state of evaluation and data collection stages. And so the planning stage, which has been started out earlier in the year around April, and then we are now ready at the 3rd stage and entering our 4th stage. Each of these natural successions have been they're designed to help guide the organizational readiness, the change management that's needed, and then, of course, the design element and interpretations of the data once it's collected. It's really meant for organizations to come to these sessions no matter where you are around the evaluation and where you are around data collection and how your agency is designing or the readiness of your design and social identity data. We welcome all of you at whatever stage you're at and to join us as we are naturally moving up through these stages. And finally, just a little plug for the centralized pieces. If you are joining us for the first time and you haven't yet caught up in all of those sessions, please note you haven't missed anything. We've recorded all of these sessions. and you can be found on our dataforchange.ca. And then specifically, these sessions are on the tab of capacity building data for change, and it's all recorded. The tools that we share today and in previous sessions have all been uploaded there. And there is a sign-up sheet to stay connected if you want to learn a little bit more about our initiative as we go forward. Next session. And I guess this is my where I end here, but just as I'm ending and passing it on to our speakers for today, we recognize that collecting this data and supporting this work, or as it relates to underpinning of equity, we know that sometimes this work is really hard, and sometimes many of you are joining us as maybe the sole person in your organization doing this work. And know that you're not alone, and to continue to do the work, but to pace yourself as you go throughout these sessions and our capacity building sessions. Remember to take self-care as you do this work, and to step away as you need it. If you're listening to these sessions, and sometimes the stories or the challenges that you hear can sometimes be hard or be triggering for you, always feel free to step back, come to the recording, or come back whenever you feel safe and ready. Practice self-care, and always remember, even though we're all in this together as a sector, this is meant to be a capacity building practice for the sector, and that there are others doing this work, maybe in different agencies, maybe in different capacities, but that you're not alone and we're in this together. Again, just to remind folks who are joining us, remember to note that this is being recorded, and you are more than welcome to to revisit the recordings and catch up if you miss. And again, enjoy yourself today. I'm really excited about what we have lined up today, and we look forward to your feedback at the end of the day. Thank you so much. Okay, back to you, Rita.
Thank you, Crystal. Thanks for that overview. So for those of you joining us for the first time today, I kind of wanted to give an overview of what the community of practice sessions are about. So as I've mentioned in previous slides, it's to provide a space, structure, and support that allow members such as yourself to share, learn, and address real-life challenges in collecting social identity data, as well as have focused conversations on what was taught around the previous SHIP and Logical workshops in previous weeks. So some ground rules for the COPs. So the first ground rule that we have is brave spaces and building trust. So this means to create an environment where everyone feels safe, respected, and encouraged to share. Then we have respectful communication, and we're hoping that in these COPs, everyone will communicate with care, attentiveness, and acknowledgement of others' dignities, which includes tone, language, body language, and listening skills. We have also maintaining confidentiality. So we hope what's shared in each of these sessions and workshops will stay within these spaces when it comes to personal stories or opinions shared without explicit permission. And then we have openness to diverse perspective. So we welcome everyone's different perspective and ideas, and even if they challenge our own. And in our workshops, we ask everyone to stay open to learning and unlearning. And lastly, we have inclusivity. So we want everyone to feel welcome, respected, and able to be themselves, which means making sure all voices are heard and not just invited. And with that, we are now excited to get into our fireside chat for today. I would like to introduce our first fireside chat speaker, Julie Callahan from Unison Health and Community Services. Julie Callahan has experience in cooperative housing, adult education, international NGOs, and has worked with Unison Health and Community Services in Toronto for 20 years, leading program planning, evaluation, accreditation, and direct services in housing development services, harm reduction, and health promotion. So I'll just stop sharing my screen so that Julie can put up her presentation.
I don't think I know how to use Zoom anymore, but I'm trying here. Just a sec. Okay, here we go. I think I've got it. Okay. So good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for carving some time out of this agenda to talk a little bit about sharing and using health equity data. I'm going to present on our experience around this from Unison Health and Community Services. I'll just go on to the next slide, if I can. Was everyone seeing the presentation?
Yep, we can
Yes,
see.
we see it. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not seeing I'm able to advance it though.
Maybe if you press the arrow, it'll go to the next slide.
Okay,
There
can you
you
see
go.
the next slide
Yeah.
now?
Mhm.
Yes.
Okay. So Unison is a community health center. I'm not sure if we have any other community health centers here today, in which case this may be kind of mostly old news to you, but we're one of 75 community health centers in Ontario who share a commitment to advancing health equity through the delivery of comprehensive primary health care. And Unison has about 14,000 clients that we're providing healthcare to on an annual basis. And then in addition to that, we're a multi-service center. So we have a number of other programs and services addressing multiple determinants of health. We're actually located in Northwest Toronto, where we have 5 main sites. And so we've been collecting health equity data from healthcare clients for a while now. There was a standardized set of health equity questions for CHC healthcare clients that was rolled out in the Toronto area for Toronto CHCs over 10 years ago. And about 2 years ago, those questions were substantially revised and updated. And we as a Toronto CHC have actually been required by our funder to collect health equity data and to measure and report on our progress with doing so. And so we've been collecting data from individual healthcare clients for many years. And we're able to record the information in a template within the client's health record, their electronic health record. And we're trying to keep this information updated, which is an ongoing piece of work. Some qualities that people self-identify, some questions or fields are not necessarily going to change over time, but some of them will. So every 2 or 3 years, we're trying to update the information that we have from clients in case, for example, their income level has changed or things like that. One new piece that we've undertaken starting this year was that we've begun to ask our staff in the organization. We have about 230 staff and our board of directors questions from our client questionnaire so that we can compare across our 3 main stakeholder groups in terms of their responses to the questions and see if that poses any areas for improvement or any questions that we should look into further. So this slide is just showing a summary of the health equity data fields that we collect. You'll note some of them are starred because we don't collect them as of yet anyway for all 3 of the stakeholder groups that I've mentioned. But we have been collecting most of this data from clients for quite some time. Some of the newer questions that were rolled out 2 years ago include the transgender question, the difficulty paying for basic needs question. Yeah, so there's some newer items in here as well. This slide here, Born in Canada, is showing you a graph that we included in our report that we prepare annually of our health equity data. So it was new for 2024-25 that we were able to share both client data and together with staff and board data. In past years, it had just been client data. And so this is an example of the type of data that we were able to share. We made it available to our board of directors and to all of our staff and managers, as we have done for many years now. And so you can see the comparison across, and we've tried to make it so that your eye can kind of travel across and see and compare across the 3 different stakeholder groups, what are the similarities and the differences. And we also compare the data to previous years to see if that provides any insights as well. So we can start to do that for board and staff data now too. I think in terms of this data, one of the things that we noted was that we might want to set ourselves a goal to try to recruit more board members that are born outside of Canada, since we seem to have a difference there compared with staff and particularly with clients. So that's just one example of how we might use this information. The next slide is showing gender identity. Again, a summary from our last year's annual report. And in terms of this particular slide, one of the things to note is there is missing data being shown. And you can see, for example, in the kind of yellow there, the board actually has 12 people, but one of them didn't respond to this question. And then the staff actually doesn't have missing data, but I was realizing as I was pulling this together that I would like to add that, because you can see that 167 staff responded to the survey, but in fact, there's 63 staff who didn't respond. So we should add that in, so this is easier to compare across the 3 buckets of stakeholders. And then you can see that we have a number of clients for whom this information is missing as well. But it doesn't necessarily have to stop us, because it means we've got a lot of data to work with, even though we don't have it for everyone. One of the things that was interesting to note, though, in reflecting on this missing data, was that when it was 22% for clients and it's 27% for staff. And so, just from reflecting on that, we're realizing that the stigma of self-identifying is really broad-based in society. That we see that staff have the hesitancy around answering questions about some of these areas, same as clients do. We see it as an ongoing process to try to gather this data, to try to continue to improve our data quality and get more of the data, a more complete set of data. We think that over time, people will become more comfortable with self-identifying. One observation that we had from this data was, and it's kind of typical healthcare stuff, not very many men in our staff. And so if you look at and compare the number of men we serve as clients versus the number of men we have on staff, we could do to expand the number of men that we have on our staff. We would probably drill down deeper to see where that is, where in particular that would apply to make better sense of this data as well. So this slide is just talking a little bit about why and how we collect health equity data. And I don't know if I'm kind of running close to time here. Maybe I should just pause. Do I have a little bit more time? I can also we could share this information afterwards and I don't have to go through it.
No, you're good on time.
Okay. So in terms of healthcare clients, we collect the data because the funder requires it partly, but also it helps to demonstrate to funders the value of our services by illustrating the complexity of who we serve. And we can also look at the data to assess gaps in service and at the practice level, at our site level, things like that. And also healthcare providers in the organization have access to the data right in the client's chart. So they can look at each client's individual information and use that in terms of shaping the care and treatment plan for that particular client. So it's used in that way too, in addition to being rolled up, because it is data that's attached to each person's health record. And we're able to securely collect and store the data in each client's electronic medical record, and then pull aggregate reports on topics of interest. One of the challenges we have around clients is that clients of Unison who don't receive healthcare don't have an electronic medical record, and we don't currently collect health equity data from them, except when we do our client experience survey every 2 years. And then we are collecting health equity data using the same questions, but that is an anonymous survey. But that's a way to start if you're an organization that isn't collecting the data and isn't sure how to wrap your head around collecting identified client data. Would be if you collect a client experience survey, you could add some questions, some health equity questions to that, and that gives you a bit of a profile of the random sample of clients who have responded to that survey, which should probably be hopefully representative of your clients overall. In terms of staff and board, as I mentioned, we started to implement this for the first time just recently. And we wanted to do it because it enables us to assess to what extent the staff and the board demographics are the same or different, which could maybe potentially address, for example, areas around hiring and recruitment of staff. And we're able to ask staff and board the same questions as clients. Basically, we just figured out a way to do this because they don't have a electronic health record with us. So what we did was we were able to identify a survey that we have to conduct for accreditation through Accreditation Canada. We were able to add our custom questions to that in order to be able to ask staff on an anonymous basis to answer the same questions that we basically asked to clients. And then secondly, for the board, they have a self-assessment that they do. And so we added these demographic questions to the self-assessment. One of the things that I've observed in reflecting on what we do well and where we can improve is we need to be able to become stronger, and it's going to be an ongoing process to be able to manipulate the data, to make changes, to make graphs and tables, for it to be more useful to us. So that's going to be a piece of work that we'll have to focus on in the years ahead. This next slide is just to show you something else that's possible for your consideration. Unison is also part of a collaborative with a number of other CHCs in Toronto. And one of the things that we've done from time to time, it's a collaborative that's kind of focused on quality improvement projects. And so one of the things we've done from time to time, because we all collect the same health equity data, is to look across our CHCs at how we're doing and see who's doing the best. What can we learn from those who are doing the best? How could we emulate them in order to do better? And this is an example of a graph. We were working on increasing the rates of colorectal cancer screening in our CHCs. And we pulled some data on various health equity variables, one of which was around racial group. And we came out with this graph. And one of the findings that we had from this was, particularly for Unison, but also for some of the other CHCs, we could see that the LGBTQ plus communities were having lower rates of screening than some of the others. And although those were actually smaller actual groups of people, they weren't like, there might have been like hundreds in the Black community group for Unison, but only like maybe 10 in a group like bisexual or something like that. But one of the things that we did do to action this data once we had pulled it was to share it with the primary care teams and to point out to them about that discrepancy around LGBTQ plus screening, colorectal cancer screening, and try to get them to remember when those folks come in to make sure that their screening is up to date if they are in fact eligible for that screening. So the next steps, and as I said at the outset, this is kind of an ongoing piece of work. We do have a quality improvement plan project for this year that's focusing on a different topic around diabetes screening. And we want to look at, we'd like to do potentially some stratification around this to be able to see if that has any learnings for this project in terms of where we need to improve. We're also going to be collecting the staff survey again in about 2027. And at that time, I plan to add a few more questions to better align with the client survey questions that we ask, and to try to address staff concerns and questions to improve our response rate. And then, as I had noted earlier, just to have this ongoing piece of work to try to strengthen and deepen our ability to extract data, to format data into charts and tables, and to compare and be able to compare and analyze it. So I think that's, oh yeah, I just added a few resources on the end here for those of you who are interested. One of them, the first one actually has a link right in it to the questionnaire that Toronto CHCs use to collect the data. And then there was some work that was done by our umbrella organization, the Alliance for Healthier Communities, some years ago around health equity data collection. They have some training and analysis for that matter, and they have some training resources and materials on their website. So that's it.
Thank you so much, Julie, for walking us through how your organization collects data and how collecting data can help us improve services and strengthen our communities.
You're welcome.
I'm just going to share my screen once again. So it's now my pleasure to introduce our next fireside chat speaker for the day, Jamie Lynn Parker from North York Senior Center. Jamie has over 7 years of experience supporting seniors and has a background in mental health and acquired brain injury services. She brings compassion, expertise, and leadership as a director of programs and support services at North York Senior Center. So I'll just take my screen down again and let Jamie share her presentation.
Hi, everyone. I hope everyone's having a good day. I'm not familiar with Zoom, oddly enough. We usually use Teams. Where do I share?
There should be a
Oh, here it
green
is.
button. Yeah.
I found it. Thank you. Okay, can everybody see my screen? Perfect. Okay, so just a little bit about North York Senior Center. We've been supporting seniors within our community for over 50 years. We are dedicated to promoting healthy aging by empowering older adults to live safely and independently in their own homes. Our work focuses on enhancing quality of life, preserving autonomy, and fostering meaningful social connections. We're deeply committed to inclusion and equity, ensuring our services are welcoming and accessible. Our agency is proud to serve the Northwest area of Toronto, which is a highly diverse region with a wide range of unique needs and populations. This part of the city is home to vibrant multicultural communities, and we are committed to delivering inclusive and responsive services that reflect the realities of those we serve. Today, I'm going to share our experience of collecting some of this data. Diversity data matters. It directly benefits the seniors and those who support them. It helps us understand each person's unique circumstances, like health needs, social supports, and language preferences, so we can provide programs and services that truly work for them. When we know the real experience of seniors, we can remove barriers, offer meaningful supports, and make every senior feel respected and included. Collecting the data from seniors requires an understanding, not only physical barriers, but also social and cultural factors. Trust and privacy are big concerns. Many seniors are hesitant to share personal or sensitive information, especially around mental health or finances. There's also generational and cultural factors at play, where certain topics may carry stigma or simply be considered too private. Accessibility can be challenging as well, with things like vision, hearing, mobility, or cognitive impairments. It really makes using standard tools hard. Language and literacy can also be a barrier, particularly for seniors whose first language is not English. And finally, not all seniors are comfortable using technology, so digital tools or online surveys may not be the best fit. We actually have learned that asking people personal questions upon intake doesn't really work. It's damaged trust before it can even be built. We have found that collecting a lot of our data in person during home visits, usually done by our care navigators, has been much more beneficial. Collecting this data is essential because it helps us identify gaps in service deliveries, and allows us to see which communities may be underserved, but also highlights inequities, showing differences in access, satisfaction, or outcome among diverse seniors. This information supports better program planning, helps us tailor our outreach, and strengthens our funding proposals. Most importantly, it's always better to be proactive, addressing needs early on. Using data in a meaningful way helps us continuously improve our programs. It allows us to adapt services based on real feedback and trends and track equity outcomes to see who we are reaching and who we're not. It also supports more personalized care, helping us tailor supports to individual needs. Ultimately, it's about making sure our services evolve as the needs of our community does. Every senior is unique, even within the same cultural or ethnic community. It's important to avoid making assumptions about one's belief, health needs, or support systems based on background alone. A senior's needs are shaped by a variety of factors, including age, health, socioeconomic status, life experiences, and personal identity. Recognizing these elements help us better understand and support each individual situation. So I'll talk about a few highlights that we've touched on since collecting this data. So a few highlights. We've combined the data we've collected with our community voices and strategic staffing to not only improve the services, but also build trust. So the first one, data alone doesn't drive change. We faced a significant wait list for our services. So rather than relying solely on diversity data, we conducted a needs assessment for our geographic area. We were able to identify clusters of similar support needs, which allowed us to reevaluate how we were doing our scheduling for our support staff. We ended up creating zones and assigning staff strategically within those zones. We optimized staff time and significantly reduced the wait list. We actually reduced our wait list by 76%. The power of word of mouth. Word of mouth plays a crucial role in reaching underrepresented communities. It builds trust, especially when where there may be language barriers that limit participation in traditional data collection methods. When community members hear about initiatives from trusted peers or familiar organizations, they're more likely to engage, share their experiences, and provide meaningful input. This grassroots approach identified a gap in our adult day program being offered in alternate languages. And then the third one, hiring staff who, the need to hire staff who speak community languages. Has allowed us to build trust and encourages open communication. When clients feel understood and supported, they're more likely to engage in and share important personal information. This strengthens our ability to collect accurate, diverse data, helping us design more inclusive, cultural, appropriate services truly reflect the needs of our community. So we have an ongoing postings for staff who speak numerous languages that we've identified from people that we support, and we'll continue to do so to make sure that we support them. And that's all I have.
Thank you so much, Jamie, for sharing the impactful work that your organization is doing and how they're engaging inclusive data practices. So I'll pass it to Kosal to lead a bit of a panel discussion and give some time for some Q&A.
Great, thank you so much. And thank you both for such a wonderful and insightful conversation as to how both of you are doing the work in your own organization and how and the impact it has on the communities that you serve. I'm just going to ask Jill, who's in the background, if you don't mind just putting the three of us as presenter modes. And then that way our conversation can be there. Just some technical pieces there. So thank you. Let's start from the beginning. And Julie, if you can maybe kick us off, and we have a few questions, well, the three of us maybe have a bit of a chat. First of all, before I start, do the two of you have questions to each other, having seen and heard each other's presentation? I want to just contextualize that both of you both serve in the North York area region, northwest area in terms of community-wise, but obviously serving very different but similar populations. I just want to open the floor to maybe you guys, if you have questions of each other before I formalize as any questions that we have today.
I don't have any questions, but I did want to point out, like, I did notice there's a lot of comparison. Like, so we are sharing similar challenges.
There we go. Here I am, and the three of us. Yeah. Julie, sorry,
One-
you're about to answer. Yeah, go ahead.
One thing I thought was interesting, Jamie, and what you said was not having a lot of success with collecting the data at intake, because that's definitely a common part of that's a usual practice for us. But I was just reflecting on that and wondering if it's because people understand that we're collecting the data for healthcare, but I don't know. Like, yeah.
I think it very much, I think you're right. I think it does have to do with the actual healthcare and the fact that we're just, I shouldn't say just support services, our support staff are absolutely phenomenal. But it's almost an expectation when you go somewhere for healthcare that you provide all of this information. Where
Yeah.
if we ask for personal information, people are, I can't even tell you how many times we've got, why do you need to know that? Is that going to change our service? And it's like, no, we promise. And truthfully, I don't know how many times I've also blamed the government. I was like, no, the government is asking us to collect this to help them delegate money. It's very much challenging, especially
Yeah.
if you're over the phone doing intake.
Yeah, I think like we always hear that building trust. I like how you said it, Jamie, building trust at the forefront hinders it right away, especially when you're at a front stage of eligibility, right? Will I answer the question, am I going to get reduced for services or increased service depending on how I answer? And so often the front question right at the beginning of any service intake is always there's a bit of a back and forth that happens there. So let's shift a little bit, and then I really appreciated the learnings in terms of techniques and spaces and where it's strategically asked the question. For Julie, you really highlighted a lot of when to naturally ask within the board, where to naturally ask within an anonymous survey to staff, or into a more intake at the health equity perspective, or when to ask staff because it's a staff survey. And recognizing there is missing data in your presentation, and you spoke to missing data. Speak a little bit about the comfort you have or any concerns you may have as you're analyzing data, and how, is the amount of missing data concerning to you? How do you deal with that?
When we were first collecting it, that it was a concern for me. I thought, well, we can't analyze this data because we don't have a good set of data. Yeah. And then in being part of the collaborative that I mentioned, we were working with someone who was supporting us with the analysis, and she said, yeah, but look at how many clients' data you've already got. So just go ahead and look at what you got, and don't worry about what you've not got, because you can learn from what you've already collected. So I have become much less concerned about that lately, but I do think it can still afford us some insights. Like, it was interesting to me looking at that data I shared about gender identity and realizing, oh, staff were actually even more hesitant to answer this question than clients.
Yeah.
And for staff, it's a confidential survey. They're not identified, whereas clients are. So I was very surprised about that, and just wanted to remember, it just reminded me that we are collecting very sensitive data, and we need to be gentle with people and give them the time that they need and accept what they are able to give and go forward and use it.
Yeah, it's kind of like the glass half empty, half full, right? What is the perspective that we're looking at? Are we focusing only on the empty, but you also have a full set of data of clients and staff and board members. And so really interesting in that process piece. And speaking to process, Jamie and Lynn, how do we support staff in that journey of collecting really diverse data? And if it hasn't been a practice of the organization and moving and acknowledging the community in which you sit in, how do you support staff to collect the data from clients and like you said, how you open in a really sensitive, mindful manner and timing? How does that happen for you?
Okay, so obviously training, that seems to be a go-to in any agency. The cultural competency, anti-bias training, it helps increase awareness and sensitivity. Having clear protocols or writing scripts, especially with newer staff, I find it helpful to almost write out exactly what you have found has been helpful. And I do find that like practice makes perfect, right? So you will find something that works best for you. And it's really gauging who you're speaking to, right? It's, you know what, sometimes you just have to listen, just listen. You can get a lot of answers from just listening. And sometimes that's harder to teach than it is to not.
And your methodology is very unique to the comfort level of your staff, right? And where your clients are at. But speaking of methodology, I mean, Julie, you've been working with a consistent cluster of agencies who've been consistently collecting data, which you call the WEQI, which is like, I'm going to assume is the West End. What is it? What does that stand for? What does that collaborative stand for again? And like, what do you?
West End Quality Improvement Collaborative, but we changed it to, I think it's We Empower Quality Improvement now, because we're not all in the
That's
West
even
End
more stronger.
anymore.
nice
So.
rebranding. But what has that meant in terms of not only being like, collecting as an agency, but also looking at methodology and then finally stats across the board, across, many other CHCs? What benefit does it have for you as an individual person doing the analysis, but also for your agency and the partnership that you've built there? What does that mean?
I mean, for me, it's been like, even though we got a pretty large organization, most people in our organization are focused on direct service. So to have colleagues to be able to kind of talk through and have a conversation about data, we don't have very many of those. So it's been really nice to have a collaborative where you have people who are all interested in these things and want to talk through them. And I found that by being in that group too, we combined our resources to hire a common person that could help us. And that person really helped us with the initial work that we did around stratifying our data. We hadn't done it before. And that person was a great number cruncher. Anyway, she helped us a lot, and she brought back, graphs where we could look at, what were our commonalities and differences and talk about, if we had some areas that needed strengthening and they were in common, maybe we could do something together. And just extends the resources and the ability that you have to kind of bounce ideas off each other and learn from each other. So I've found that to be quite helpful. I think it's really moved Unison forward in terms of our level of sophistication and the way that we're able to examine and analyze the data that we have.
Yeah, and the additional resources to have somebody very neutral to look at your data is probably very helpful as well.
Yeah,
it's really great. And I think that leads us to the question around capacity, right? And that maybe I can ask both of you to help us close off, as we want to just give more room to the audience to also ask questions. But maybe our one takeaway we can say is related to how do we help our staff who are collecting data? How do we help folks here in this room who's collecting data? What's the kind of one like tip or that you would provide for folks in the room listening to how do we create safe space in social identity data collection? I know it's a big question, but what is your kind of one takeaway in your own reflections in this work, and how do we share that with others in this room? Jamie, do you want to?
Sure, sure.
Yeah.
I think, first of all, acknowledging that it's never done. And there's not one tool to use, at least in my industry, because every individual is different, right? Being transparent, providing a safe but private space, it's all helpful, but it's really just, I know I said it before, but honestly, listen, just listen. Allow people to talk, allow people to share, show interest, engage, and you will get so much information.
That's awesome. Thank you, Jamie.
I
Julie?
really agree with all of that.
Yeah.
And, I think it is useful if it's new to staff to be able to have some opportunity to do some, either see some videos of people collecting the data, which there are some of those on that one resource that I highlighted there, which are they're quite good. And to see them navigate some of the challenging situations that can come up, and then, to maybe practice that a little bit in a safe situation with your peers or whatever before you actually start, collecting the data from clients in intake sessions or whatever, I think is quite helpful.
That's
but yeah,
great.
I agree with what Jamie said as well.
Yeah, making the space, practicing in a safe space, and being supportive in those spaces. Thank you so much for both of your presentation. I think I've taken away from even to apply to 211 here, and so thank you for your time and consideration. I just wanted to throw it back to Rita, if you want to maybe take any questions I know the audience had, or if we want to move to the agenda item. I know I'll leave that facilitation to you. Thank you.
Yeah, I think there is one question in the chat if you guys want to answer it. So Ebru said, related to this, I guess she's referring to a comment Sophie made. Once your data analysis or report is shared with your partners and clients, what control do you have over how it's used? And what barriers prevent nonprofits from making sure their data drives change, and what opportunities exist to overcome them? Can you elaborate on this?
And I think she is referring to the data alone doesn't drive change. That's the comment or quote.
So sorry, was that me then? Sorry.
Yeah, it doesn't specify, but I think, yeah, you were the one that made that comment in your presentation.
Yeah. Because having data alone doesn't drive change. You have the data, what are you going to do with it? You can't just sit on it. Okay, I collected the data, everything's good. You got to do something with it. You have to put it to practice. You have to, again, listen and know where to put that data to use. I don't know if that's helpful.
It's interesting because I'm looking at the question and it's talking about sharing data with partners and clients. And aside from what I've shared with you here today, we don't really do a lot of that. I mean, we do share some of the data, the health equity breakdown, when we share back client experience survey results with clients, which we do through the TVs in our waiting room. But mainly we're sharing it internally at this point for our own quality improvement efforts. So that's being shared with our board, with our staff, and those are the main folks. I'm sorry if I somehow said something that made you think we share it with clients widely, because we don't really. But I am aware, and this is something where, as an organization, Unison hasn't had a lot of ability to do it. But if you go to any of these health equity tables, they'll start talking about the principles around health equity data collection and the ethics of it, and making sure that it's community controlled and things like that. And I know that there's a code for collection of data related to the Black communities, and there's another one around Indigenous communities. And I have kind of trusted that our umbrella organization has kind of vetted these things, and we're part of a larger group of CHCs who do this work. And so I have understood and trusted that those things were kind of dealt with at a different level. But I mean, I think it's legitimate for clients to have access to the data in aggregate. I mean, they do have access to it for their own data because there's privacy rights, right? They can get their own data at any time they want to. I don't really concern myself that much at this point with how our data is used in the hands that have it. Maybe I should, I don't know, but I don't really worry about it that much. And what barriers prevent nonprofits from making sure their data drives change? There's a lot of data, and just being able to process it, understand it. Sometimes action can get lost in that, is what I've found. That's why I was talking about getting better at being able to pull reports and manipulate data, because like we have some people who support us with that now too, but it would be better if we could do it more like at the front line. Like I have, like a lot of the reports that I get, I ask someone to prepare them for me, right? So that person extracts the data for me. It might be better if I had a closer contact with the data and was able to manipulate it more myself. Because I'm involved in quality improvement in the organization, and that might help me, right? And that might be a barrier that could be overcome. What opportunities exist to overcome them? I'm not quite sure how to answer that right now. I would need to reflect on that.
Thank you, Julie. I think Shireen also has a comment to make.
I just wanted to chime in a little bit because we have some experience when it comes to ensuring that as you share data with partners and collaborate as a community, what that can possibly look like. And yes, there are challenges that we've experienced with data sharing as well, but some of the things that we've done, and we're a health service provider too. So taking that health equity perspective is also very important. And that's a commonality amongst many of our partners, is that we have health equity goals that are common for our community. So we have communities of practice within the regions that we serve that are health equity focused communities of practice, where we develop partnership agreements that include data sharing. Obviously, certainly disaggregated data, but around those common areas that we all collect. So around the social determinants of health and how they impact health equity and those health equity goals. So we develop those agreements between the collaboration and between the partnerships that are very specific around what the data is going to be used for that we share. And we also advise the clients that their data may be shared with community partners and how it's going to be used if it's shared with community partners as part of this health equity collaborative. So that's one way in which you can kind of manage, and I think the word that the person used was control how the data is used. So that's one way in which you can kind of control to some extent how data is used. But I also think that and just going back to something that Julie said, one of the areas in which we've been trying to do better as an organization is really how we share data with our clients and ensure that our clients know that they have access to data. Because I think that's sometimes part of the issue with, or the challenge that many organizations have, is that yes, clients have the right to their own data, but organizations struggle with whether clients have the right to the overall data of the organization. And there are many ways in which data can be relevant to clients and especially to communities. And we're going to go in our part to one of the ways in which you can look at it, where you're not just sharing raw data. There's no value to raw data for clients and communities. It doesn't have context. So what we are doing is, and I'll share with you sort of our health equity planning that we do with our data. but then you share those health equity plans and you share the outcomes that the data has informed. So we share what the data has enabled us to do, what people's data has enabled us to do, and how. So we'll see when I talk about the health equity plans that we make, how the data informs the plan, and then you can inform clients and communities how their data was used and what their data and what that your overall data says about the organization. So that's just an example of a way in which you can share data without sharing the raw data because it doesn't have value for people.
Thanks, Shireen. Thanks for pitching into the conversation. I'll just reshare my screen again.
Great conversation, by the way, and thank you so much
Mhm.
for such an engaging piece.
Yeah, thank you, Jamie and Julie, for your presentations today. If there aren't any more questions at the moment, and you do want to send any questions in, you can always send them for the Data for Change email, and we can forward them to the speakers. So with that, we'd like to move on into a short 5-minute break, just so everyone can kind of recharge, stretch your bodies, and after that, we'll resume with our presentations from Logical Outcomes. So feel free to turn off your cameras and take a quick break. Thank you, everyone. Hi everyone, I hope we're all back from our break now and we had a few minutes to stretch. So I'd like to now shift gears as we'll be having our team from Logical Outcomes lead the next presentation titled AI for Data Visualizations, Considerations and Tips. So Sophie Lewin, who is the Director of Evaluation and Research, will be sharing her reflections on the use of AI tools for data visualization and qualitative analysis. So I will just take down my screen.
Thanks, Rita. Okay, let me try sharing my screen. Let's get started here. And it's just me today. Meta is not able to join, but I'm excited to take everybody through this little experiment that I ran and hear what folks think of the results. Okay. Sorry, let's see how this works. There. Can everyone see my screen?
Yes.
Okay, fantastic. Great. So let's move forward here. I want to be quick because I want to make room for Shep to speak today as well. All right. Just I think it was last week, Meta and I shared a workshop around data visualization, some best practices for equitable and user-centered data visualization. And following up on that presentation, I was thinking about the use of AI in data visualization. This is kind of a hot topic, obviously. Logical Outcomes has done a lot of experimentation with AI, with generative AI, that is, and as a person who's involved in data processing and creating data visualization myself, I've kind of dipped my toes in the pool of AI for data viz, but that was a couple of years ago actually, and I hadn't looked at it recently. So I thought this is a really good opportunity to see if there are some tools out there that can maybe improve nonprofit efficiency in dealing with data, in creating data visualizations, maybe provide some support, make it a little faster for us, make it a little easier for us, and help potentially add to our capacity to communicate in an equitable and useful way around the learnings that we get out of data projects. So I ran a little experiment, and I'm here today to tell you about the results of my experiment. So the question is, should I use AI tools to assist with data visualization? It's a question I ask myself. And thinking about that question, I want to take into consideration a few different factors here. So data security is number one. When I'm considering using a platform or any kind of tool, I want to make sure that any data that I share I want to make sure that I understand basically the security parameters of that platform. Accuracy, of course, is really critical. We know about the Gen AI's tendency to hallucinate, to make mistakes that look really good and are hard to find unless you really know your stuff and your data. So accuracy is critical. And then transparency. If I'm feeding my data into kind of a black box and it's doing something which I can't understand and then spitting out a cool looking chart, that's no good to me. I need to really understand the work behind the analysis behind the data visualization and be able to verify as a responsible user. What is the quality of the output? Does it meet those, if anyone attended the other week, does it meet those criteria that we shared for accessible and user-centered data visualization that tells a strong story? And finally, is it worth it? Is it actually leading to greater efficiency? Is it cheaper than spending the time that it would take me, for example, to make this data visualization? So these are the considerations that I kind of came up with. And if folks want to add into the chat, I'm curious to hear about what considerations you might bring to this question of should we experiment with AI and data for data visualization rather. Okay, so I ran an experiment. I decided to use Julius.ai to just analyze a few columns of de-identified, really stripped down data and I thought I'll see what happens. So Julius, it's I don't work for Julius. I'm not trying to like promote the use of Julius, truly just an experiment. It's really the leading, I would say, a Gen AI tool for data visualization out there. It's a US-based company. It's been around for a few years now. I think I first interacted with it like 2023. So I decided let's go with the leader in the sector and try it out. So the first question is all around security, and I was actually kind of surprisingly, happily surprised by the attention that this platform seems to pay to data security. It seems that they're compliant with, as it says, industry-leading standards, and they're working towards GDPR compliance, which is fantastic. But the fact is, all the data, it's a US company, the data is stored and processed in the United States. For most of the work that we do at Logical Outcomes, it just simply does not meet our requirements. We don't like to process data or store data on US servers. So that's the kind of thing that when we're considering using platforms like this for any kind of data processing, we need to understand what is the data residency as well as other considerations around data security. So the nice thing about Julius is it really clearly documents all of that information so that an informed user can go through the documentation and make a good decision. And that's not true of all of these companies. Okay, so here's the method for my experiment. I uploaded a simple CSV with 3 columns. Sorry, I have to move my chat. And no identifying information whatsoever. And I thought, okay, I'll upload it. Sorry, my chat is playing tricks on me and taking up the entire screen. I'll upload it and I will I'll see what this AI tool does with the data. Then what I did was I did some light prompting to establish preferences and expectations. And I wondered how many rounds of feedback is it going to take to produce a good looking, useful, user-centered kind of data visualization. So I'm going to run through this really quickly, but just so you know, this is completely de-identified data that we collected from a survey looking at burnout among medical residents. And we asked a question among, these are just a couple of columns from a great big data set, but we asked, and the data is encoded. And we asked a question around whether or not folks who were responding to the survey and sharing their experience of burnout on the job, whether or not they identified as having a disability. So that's that Q disability column. So I stripped the data. I made sure that there was no way that anybody could possibly be identified here, and I uploaded it. Come on. And so what happened when I did that is immediately Julius kind of jumped right into the analysis, and it produced some weird things. What do folks think of this data visualization? Use the chat to tell me. I know there's not a lot of us, but if you have any thoughts, please chime in. I mean, really what's clear to me is it's not clear at all. Julius didn't have enough, like the AI did not have enough context to be able to produce a user-friendly data visualization because it hadn't shared enough information with the AI. So I'm going to give it the benefit of the doubt here. And it's the way it's treating the data is really weird, but it didn't have any context. It didn't know what the columns were all about, so it couldn't make an informed decision. I would also have made a bad data visualization if given those 3 columns and absolutely no context. But this was kind of interesting just to see what I was going to do. And it gave me 2 charts and a bunch of Python code, which I can't actually read. And they were weird. So then I gave it a prompt, and I thought I would share this prompt because it might be helpful to folks who are working with AI to look at, what this process can look like. So in this prompt, I'm giving it clear instructions, some context around what does this data mean? What do each of the columns mean? I realized when I looked at those data visualizations, actually, that I hadn't cleaned the data properly, and there was a weird value in there that needed to be cleaned. So that was actually kind of helpful. I asked it to get rid of that. And then I said, hey, these are my research questions. This is what I want to understand from this data. And I want clean, easy to read charts with a clear title that encapsulates the key messages or the key stories. And then immediately it gave me like a really interesting chart that is not the kind of thing I would share with an audience. Like, not many of us can read a density chart easily. It's not a chart I've ever created before, but it really showed me the shape of the data. And I thought, kind of an interesting way. And there are problems with this chart, like the legend isn't great, but it gave me a feeling for the data and some key patterns in the data around the elevated burnout scores of folks who identify as having disabilities that I think was very interesting and useful to me as an analyst. And then it gave me a couple of other charts, which were pretty good, to be honest. Where it's comparing the scores of people who people who don't identify as having a disability against those of people who do identify as having a disability. And it gave me a really nice, clear heading here as well, like summarizing the story. If anyone has thoughts about this, I'm interested. But one weird thing, like AI is a funny thing to play around with. You can see how the title was cut off. And that's how I received the chart. What it does is it produces a bunch of Python code, and then it gives you a JPEG that you can download, or a PNG file or whatever, an image file. And when I downloaded the image file, the title was cut off, which is such a weird thing, right? I'm just looking at the chat. Yeah, substantially. I agree with that. That's not great. And so we went through another round. Oops. Okay, so here's my next prompt. Please remove the x-axis label from both charts to clean things up. Make sure that the chart title fits within the image. It's cut off. Maybe you can reduce the font size. And so it gave me this. And I don't know what folks think about this, but I thought it's not bad. Like, pretty quickly, this is about 15 minutes of work, and it actually did give me something useful. There are things I would do, like I don't know why there's this line across the top of the chart and down the other side of the chart. But yeah, it's pretty good. So I thought, well, I'm going to share this. Then, one thing about this chart, the number of people identifying as having a disability was very low, in which you would expect from this particular sample. And so I asked the AI, how should we deal with that? How do we deal with the fact that there are just 12 respondents out of 200 plus who identify as having a disability? What do you advise me to do? And it gave me like a really thoughtful response around including the number, the N in the chart labels. It suggested maybe a subtitle or a footnote, and it said keep that headline or title like focused on the key finding, which I agree with. And so I chose an approach here, and here is the chart. And it doesn't look bad. I mean, it looks a little better than what you would, it's basically in line with what you would get out of Excel if you don't have some nice templates already in Excel. And with a tool like this, you can use a system prompt to, or you can set up templates so that you can have nicer looking, more engaging kind of data visualizations in future. But I just wanted to compare this with a chart that a colleague made using exactly the same data. And it's kind of interesting to see, like, the AI made some good choices that I agree with, and then and my colleague made some good choices too. The AI chart is cleaner. I don't know about how it's labeled, you know, no disability versus disability. It isn't, that language doesn't feel great to me. I would kind of, it's nice and concise, but I might want to say respondents identifying as respondents who have a disability, respondents who live with a disability, something like that, instead of just disability. But that is really a subjective kind of judgment. So it's kind of interesting to compare it to work that a person did in Excel. It was certainly very quick. This is some information about costing. It took me 5 messages to get that result. And in order to get the chart really where I would want it, it would probably take a few more prompts and some more back and forth with the AI. But it was free. And so just in summary, it's, in my experience, this was a very nice, quick way to get a sense for patterns in a very simple data set. It made pretty decent design choices kind of right out of the box, like fine design choices. It did some weird things that I wasn't expecting, but I was able to correct it via just plain language prompts. And I was in charge. Like, it's really critical that as humans, we remain in charge when we're, you know, we're steering this ship, so to speak, when we're doing data analysis. So I knew my data set. I had a sense for the story I wanted to tell, and then I was able to prompt the AI to support me to tell that story effectively. And I was able, through the outputs that it shares, it actually does support transparency around the calculations and what have you in a way that I was satisfied with. So I could check for accuracy and accessibility. And Julie, that's a great question about, I certainly would not upload health data, there's no question, to a tool like this. And I don't know of any products that are Canadian and store data in Canada and are, I don't know, but I'm going to take a look for it. And this is, yeah, I mean, you've seen what the use case was here. It was very simple. I definitely want to learn a lot more before considering a more complex use case. But I know that that Julius and other tools like it, I mean, they're just changing and evolving at a really rapid pace. It's totally overwhelming. It's totally terrifying as someone who works with data as a living or for a living, you know, to see a tool that can do the work that I like to do so quickly. But it is also kind of exciting. And I know that this particular tool has evolved a lot in sophistication. And so there may be, I'm sure on the horizon, there are solutions like this that can meet potentially our security requirements. But those are number one when we're looking at a tool for analysis. Shireen, hi.
Thanks, Sophie. I just wanted to emphasize your point that you made here around the human needs to be in charge, because I think that as much as AI is valuable for efficiency and can be helpful for many of us, I think that it serves as a reminder that we still work in human services, the majority of us. And so telling that human story is really important, and data should be a help in doing that. And so I think that to be mindful of, that, we're still the ones telling the story, and we're still the ones that collected the data, and we're still the ones that are telling stories about other human beings, and what that data tells us. So as much as I think AI can be helpful in the technical aspects of telling that story, it's so important to remember that, we are still in charge. We're still the ones making the decisions. And that includes how we use AI and how it can benefit the people that we serve in our data sets. So I just wanted to reiterate that point because I think it's really important. And you did a good job of really showing us like the way in which AI can be helpful in, that visualization piece, especially for those of us that aren't as great with Excel or other, other data
Yeah.
management systems. That might be a benefit for folks who don't know Excel very well or are afraid of Excel, because I know there's many of us that, are a little bit hesitant with Excel. So it can be very helpful. But to your point that there are people that do this, like you do this. This is what you do for a living, right? So, I think there's always benefit to interacting with human beings.
For sure. Thank you for those thoughts, Shireen. Yeah. Uh, yeah, ideally, the way we sometimes talk about this is if you're able to make these data visualizations more quickly and in a way that is less stressful, then it frees up more time to be interacting with those humans. So the idea is perhaps it's going to give you a little more space to get that feedback, to share the data visualizations with community, to get feedback on the data visualizations, to hone and like craft a story together, right? That would be nice if that's what we did with the extra time that we got from AI. But I want to build on your point about Excel because generally I do use, it makes me realize that I do use or AI for data visualization, but what I use it for is to help me with Excel formulae because I'm not an Excel whiz by any means. My background is like participatory and qualitative research and not really data visualization. I've learned it in the last few years. So more and more I'm going to Gen AI tools like Anthropic's Claude Sonnet and asking it, basically sharing similar kinds of prompts and saying, give me the formulae that I need to make this happen in Excel. And then it gives me a lot more, I like it because it gives me a bit more control or a feeling of more control over the visualization. Okay. Any other comments or questions? I'm going to stop sharing. All right. Well, thanks for your patience as I took you through that somewhat technical presentation. I hope folks who are experimenting find it useful.
Thank you so much, Sophie, for your presentation. The examples you shared really gave us new ways to think about our work and how data is collected. And with that, I'll get Shireen to share her presentation for today.
Thank you. And my colleague Nicole is also here. She made it, thank goodness, all in one piece. So thanks everyone for sticking around. I'm Shireen Ramprasad. My pronouns are she, her, and I'm the Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion Manager at Services and Housing in the province, also known as SHIP. And then Nicole will introduce herself.
Thank you, Shireen. My name is Nicola Bruscato. I go by pronouns she, her, and I'm the manager of Central Intake and Access at SHIP. Lovely to be here. I will be doing the screen work and you'll get to hear Shireen. Thanks so much.
So as I had mentioned when we were having our fireside chat, we thought we'd talk a little bit today with you all about a practical application of data that we use at SHIP in order to be able to mindfully and meaningfully use our data to inform service provision and when we are looking at programming. We are a health service provider, like I've mentioned, and so our focus is around health equity. And so I know that we had a wonderful presentation this earlier from a CHC who also is focused on health equity. So I thought it was really, really great to see that synergy there as well. So what we're going to talk about today with you is one of the tools, and there are many tools that we all use when we're looking at data, but this is an application tool that we use in order to be able to use our data to inform our health equity practice. and it's called the Health Equity Impact Assessment. In our last workshop, we talked a little bit about the Health Equity Impact Assessment, just briefly, in the context of trauma-informed practice. So this HIA, as we like to refer to it with an acronym, is a standardized tool that was created by, I believe, the Ministry of Health or Health Quality Ontario, that we have been using for years and years. And the HIA is only one of many tools that are available to folks when it comes to determining where you are with health equity within an organization, within service provision. But we have used it so long that we're very used to how to use this tool and how to use it to the benefit of our service provision. One of the things that the HIA does is it takes you through step by step of how you get to develop a health equity plan and a health equity strategy for any particular program or policy within your organization. We mainly focus on using it to help programs develop health equity plans that are specific to their program needs and to their client needs that they identify. So when I say they, the team of the program identifies, and we go through a process with each team using the HIA with the team to develop their plan. So how does our data and our data set come into this? When we look at our social demographic data, what we're really looking at SHIP is the social determinants of health. And we recognize that when we're collecting social identity data, what we're identifying is what are the groups of people, what are the identifiers for people, for clients that are within our programs at SHIP. And so we can do that with our data set for the organization on a whole, and we can also parse it to each program. So when I do the HIA, the Health Equity Impact Assessment with the different programs, I work with the teams to look at the data, and I take a look at their program specific data to identify what the population that they're working with can tell us about the scoping part of the Health Equity Impact Assessment. So this past year, when we did the HIA with all the programs at SHIP, in order to generate an organizational health equity plan, we scoped very particular populations because our data told us that these are the populations that have the greatest impact, or that we are missing when it comes to health equity, that we're not being focused and intentional in our service provision when it comes to these populations. And so for us at SHIP this past year, when we did the HIA, we scoped equity deserving groups, and we defined equity deserving groups according to human rights legislation. So we scoped specifically a racialized population, women identified population, people with disabilities, our 2S LGBTQ+ population, and Indigenous population. And so then we can go back to our data and pull out from our data for each program what those population demographics look like as well. And that's part of the process when we do the Health Equity Impact Assessment. From there, you look at the determinants of health that are most impacted, or that you want to ensure that you are having the most impact on. So for us at SHIP, for each program, they identified from the social determinants of health data which areas they wanted to scope and then look at potential impacts. So for the most part, the teams at SHIP and the organization, we looked at housing and income and support networks and access as the social determinants of health that we wanted to look at impacts more specifically. The HIA then takes you through a process of looking at unintended positive and negative impacts within that program and within your service delivery. I take the teams through a conversation, a discussion around where they can identify unintended positive impacts and unintended negative impacts that the program or their service delivery or access to their service is having on the particular populations that we have scoped. And once we have identified these unintended impacts, we look at whether or not we need to collect more data in order to provide more evidence around how we can put in place improvement measures or a mitigation strategy for those unintended impacts. If that's the case, then that's the next step for that team, is to collect what more information or evidence or data they may need. If not, then we can move on to the mitigation part of the HIA. Mitigation is really identifying ways to reduce potential negative impacts and amplify the positive impacts that the team has identified in the potential impacts. And when we do the mitigation part of the assessment, what we're looking for is what are the things that are feasible? What are the strategies? What are the tangible areas that we can operationalize? And you'll see how we do that when I get to the health equity plan itself. What can we operationalize and what can we put in place, whether it's a change management piece or whether it's an initiative that we can then mitigate and monitor progress. The fourth step is monitoring. This is where we set up a way to measure success and understand progress. We want to evaluate whether our mitigation strategy is working, and the only way to really do that is to ensure that it is part of the plan, that monitoring and an evaluation methodology is identified in your plan to begin with. And then step 5 is dissemination. This is where we communicate and share. And how are we going to do that? How are we going to share our results with the rest of the organization or potential partners? Or, as I had mentioned, we sit at communities of practice around health equity in the regions that we serve. So are we going to be sharing and disseminating our information and our health equity strategies and plans, as well as successes with our partners? So we identify all of these things when we do the health equity impact assessment, with the intention of using this assessment to develop for each program a health equity plan. So you can change the slide, Nicole. Just give us a second. We have documents that we want to go through, so it's not really a slide deck.
Shireen, the action plan?
Yeah, the blank template one.
Perfect. Sure. Sorry, we're used to Teams, so I'm always like, am I sharing the correct screen? There we go.
The HIA is actually a free resource, but I'm not sure if it's still available on Health Quality Ontario's website or the Ministry of Health's website. They have had it available for a number of years, but they're in a transition period right now with the tool and updating and deciding whether or not they're going to continue to use the tool or train the tool. So if you look on Health Quality Ontario, it might still be there. I'm just not 100% sure if it still is. So this is our health equity action plan template, and we created this template internally. And all it does is it really provides each team with a plan where they can track progress, where they can identify what their actual plans and the steps of their plans are, and they can all share this document, and the team can add as they see fit, and as they move along in their plan. In working their plan, they're able to sort of track their own progress and make additions as necessary and changes as necessary. So the plan really identifies, and what we do with the information from the HIA is we look at the potential impacts and we look at what are the priorities, and we try to, like I said, tangible and feasible for each team. So more often than not, when I do the HIA with teams, they identify a lot of different areas and a lot of different impacts. So there's usually more than 1 or 2 areas that they have identified in the assessment piece. What we try to do is then do a prioritization exercise with each team to prioritize 1 or 2 areas that we can actually develop a mitigation strategy that is feasible, that we'll be able to do over the course of the fiscal year. That's how we do our health equity planning and reporting. So we take all of the unintended impacts, and the team then looks at that and prioritizes the 1 or 2 areas and impacts that they can develop a mitigation plan and a mitigation strategy for throughout the course of the year. We identify that plan, and it says here the mitigation plan and what the actions associated with each of those priorities are going to be. And this is a living, breathing document, and it is a process that is adaptable and changeable. As we all know, when you put plans in place and when you develop a strategy or start an initiative, more often than not, things change as you move along. So we want to provides space and room for teams to recognize that that is a part of the process that's to be expected. We also then identify what the monitoring plan will look like. And so how are we going to evaluate progress? How are we going to, when are we going to check in? How long do you need? How much do you need? How much time do you think it's going to take with the actions that you've identified for us to be able to see if they've had an effective change? So we negotiate that with the team, and it really is up to the team because they are the ones that are doing the work. They're the ones that know the clients the best. They are the ones that know their services and what are the inequities that are inherent in their services the best. So we really work with the team to develop that monitoring strategy. A lot of the times, this ends up being around every 3 months. Every quarter, we kind of do a bit of a check-in to see whether or not there's been any progress. Have they even started what they had identified as actions, or have there been challenges or barriers to progress that we need to now take a look at as well? So I like to try to do a check-in with the team if possible, every quarter. If not, at least every 6 months, we're checking in so that we can see, do we need to change anything? Do you need to develop a different strategy? Or has there been an impact and you've seen, because of the actions that you've taken, you've seen the impact already, and then we need to be able to evaluate and then disseminate the information, share with others if we've seen progress, so that others may benefit and other programs within the organization may also benefit if we've been able to do something that has been successful and that has, reduced inequities within our program and our service provision. We also look on our plan at outcome measures. How are we measuring progress? What are we going to be reporting on? How are we going to report this progress? And what are the actual outcomes that we're expecting from the plan? You want to move down, Nicole? I think the next page. So then we break it apart a little bit, and this is how the team can then have their input in the plan. For each priority, we identify the action, what the expected outcomes are, the method in which we're going to go about. You can outline the steps here around what we're going to take as a team or who's responsible for that, the timelines that you think you may need or that are associated with it, and then the status. And this is a way for teams to keep track of their progress and to keep track of, who are you going to go to in case you have an issue, or if something needs to be changed, who are you going to be able to talk to about that? And when I look at the lead and responsibility, it isn't always the manager of the program. There are folks and there are teams within SHIP who have identified or self-identified staff that are interested or invested in being the lead and want to be able to be a part of, the work that we're doing around health equity. So this is where we can kind of keep track of those things. So that's our template or how we develop health equity plans at SHIP. And now we're going to show you just a little bit, a glimpse of, we'll share with you our organizational health equity plan for the organization. And this is what I report on to the ministry, which is our funder, our primary funder. So when we do the health equity impact assessment and develop health equity plans with all of our teams, I take a look at all of those plans, and I try to pull out from all of the plans across all of the organization, what are the common threads that I see? What are the common priorities that we are working on as an organization across our teams? And we've been able to, this past year, identify 4 different priorities that are common across. And I don't know the exact number, but I think we have over 20 different teams at SHIP that work in 3 different regions. So we were able to look at holistically and globally across all of those health equity plans. We were able to pull out 4 different priority areas that seem to be fairly common as far as the work that we're doing. And the way in which we're going about that work and the mitigation plans that exist. So for us at SHIP, one of the areas that we're looking at is peer support models that can be amplified without having to formalize a process. So when we see that there is organic activities, organic things that peers are doing to support each other, as clients, when they're attending groups, are inadvertently supporting each other without a formal process in place, we want to amplify that across the organization. So are there ways in which we can do that? We also have across the organization, and many, if not all of the teams identified this as an unintended negative impact, was the assessment process and the assessment tools that we use not being adaptive for equity deserving groups, or the unique needs of clients in the homeless population. Some of our tools that we use may be discriminatory inadvertently, or require us to collect data in a way that isn't aligned with our data equity work that we do. So one of the areas that we have undertaken as an organization and continue to do is an evaluation of our assessment tools for cultural responsivity, and to understand that when we assess our tools that we're using, that we have the capacity and the ability as an organization to adapt those tools and to make the changes necessary to reduce inequity within our service provision. If you want to go down, I think there's two more. Yeah. So in our housing and networks and access areas, as a social determinant of health, one of the other actions that was fairly common across the organization, or a concern as an inequity across the organization, was around developing a prioritization strategy for housing and supports that can be applied across all programs and adapted to the needs of the programs. So prioritization of our wait list, prioritization of supports and services that we provide to equity deserving populations was one of the areas that really did come out within the majority of the health equity impact assessments that we did. And we saw it in different ways, because depending on the region. So this looked different, or the discussion and conversation about this looked different in Dufferin County than it did in those programs that primarily serve Peel region, or primarily serve Brampton versus serving Mississauga, and then Kitchener as well is another region that we served, where this conversation looks very different. But it's primarily the same thing, that idea of prioritization based on need and understanding that there's inequities within the system when it comes to housing and supports that we need to address in some capacity. And then finally, another underlying, especially in our very direct service, where we have had programs in place or support services in place for a very long time, there was a concern, and there was some talk around graduation or having a flexible service delivery model of care with responsiveness to clients' levels of needs over time. And this is another area that we have been having many conversations about across the organization for a number of years. And so I thought it was appropriate to put this on our health equity plan for the organization, as it is an area of inequity that has been identified by clients as well as staff that we need to address in some way, or at least begin to address, to begin to try to figure out a way to foster this idea that we are doing our job well in housing supports when they no longer need us. They may still need our housing, but they may not, they should no longer need us. That's how we can measure success, is when folks no longer need the support, so they're able to live independently, but that their option to have the support when you need it is always there. So this is another area that we're really working on as an organization. So what we've talked about is we've used our data to inform our assessment of health equity in the organization. And then from that assessment, we have been able to develop health equity plans for each program that programs can work through to reduce inequities within our service provision. And then from those health equity plans, we develop an organizational plan that enables us to look at data around, have we reduced inequity across all of the regions that we serve within our services. So just a little bit of a continuum of how you can go from that data collection piece of collecting socio-demographic or social identity data to the point of implementation, and then having sort of a global perspective on implementation as well. That's it. That's all I got today. So
There's a
hopefully,
question in the chat,
oh,
Shireen.
sorry, I didn't look at it.
That's okay.
Talk a bit how SHIP assesses tools for cultural responsiveness and equity. So one of the things that we also developed, and I think we presented a little bit ago, was our equity assessment tool that we developed that's very specific to SHIP, and it was developed by our EDI committee with some input from clients and the Client and Family Program Advisory. So we developed that tool to help us when we are assessing policies, programs, assessment tools, which is a little bit strange to say, but that tool has really given us a bit of a foundation and a consistent process in which we can go back to when we are looking at things like this. We also have a health equity framework and charter that we always refer to as well in order to be able to be aligned and make sure that we are aligned with what the health equity foundations are, and that we're always moving towards health justice for clients. So there's a number of different ways, but certainly, yes, it starts with the tools that we use to assess the tools that we use. So say that 10 times fast. But yes, that's what we do, Sophie. Any other questions?
Thanks so much, Nicole and Shireen, for sharing the Health Equity Action Template. These discussions are really valuable, and I'm sure everyone has gotten some ideas on what they can take back to their own work as well. So we'll just reshare my screen. So we do have, we can take a few more minutes to answer any questions or share any sort of experiences that anyone has in the audience as well. If whether you want to put it in the chat or unmute, we can take this time. You can ask any of the speakers if you have any questions. And if not, we can move on to the next slide. You can always send us an email afterwards if you have any questions. So we do want to do it, take a quick second to do a Menti poll. So if you could either scan the QR code once you go to menti.com, or you can enter this code in here. And it's just some feedback that we can use for planning our future sessions and workshops. So Gareth, if you want to share the screen with the Menti poll, that would be great.
Yeah, sure. Kishan, can you just give me the access?
Today is Jill in the background, not Keishan. But
Oh, okay. So sorry.
that's okay.
Thank you.
Okay. I'll find help. Thanks.
So we just want to know what formats would help you support your learning in future sessions. Could be small group conversations, full group conversations, interactive activities. So I guess everybody likes the full group presentation so far. I'll just take another second and then we can go on to the next question once we get a couple more answers. Okay, Brett, do you want to move on to the next question? And how confident do you feel in applying today's learnings to your own work? Could be from any of the presentations, anything that we discussed today. That's good, good. Well, we hope we can tailor the next couple workshops and presentations to help support your growth, and we're all here to support the organization. So if there's any questions that anyone has, you can always reach out or check the Data for Change website. Okay. Thanks, Gareth. I'll share my screen again. Second. So we also have the Data for Change survey. So if you want to take a quick minute to scan the QR code, and whether you want to fill it out now or after the presentation, it would be really helpful for us to help also tailor our future presentations. Hope everyone had a chance to scan that. Okay, so I want to thank everybody today, as well as all the presenters, to 211, to my colleague Gareth. We appreciate you taking the time to share your learnings, experiences, as well as your successes and challenges. And we are pleased to announce the successful completion of the third stage of the Data for Change project, which was analysis and interpret. And we are now moving on to the final stage, which is share and use. So the next workshop will be led by SHIP on October 9th. And the registration link will be in the chat that Gareth will share. And if you do have any questions, you can always email us as dataforchange@findhelp.ca. And you'll also be able to find the link for this session and any of the previous sessions that we did on the Data for Change website. That'll also be in the chat. Thank you everyone again, and I hope you all have a great day.
I believe you can stop sharing.
Yeah, sorry, my
Great.
froze right there. Let me just
It's
share.
okay.
I think like we have to just stop the recording as well.
Yes, please.
It stopped.
Congratulations, guys.
Thank you so much.
For your support.
I'm
Yeah,
sorry, Truth and Reconciliation took over me, and it was like
Yeah, no worries.
so busy. So,
No
but
worries at
I'm
all.
glad you guys are so organized on your end. You just pulled it through, and I really liked the interactive survey at the end. It was great.
Mhm.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
think
we
that's
thought we'd
kind
do
of like,
something different this time because the poll last time didn't really work well for us. So we thought
yeah,
just
this is
Menti is
it.
always
And
a fun kind of thing to just put at the end.
exactly. So you just kind of, you pivot, and you guys are really great at that. So
Yeah.
thank you.
Thank you so
Um,
much, Crystal.
Yeah, we'll
Yeah.
touch base after. I mean,
Yeah.
we're good,
For
but
sure. I
yeah,
think
let's just think. Yeah, last phase. What do we
Mhm.
do? Last stage, and then we got to think
Yeah.
about the in-person, and what we want to do for that, and
Mhm.
how we
Is
want to.
that something you would want to set up a meeting with Ship and Logical, or is that like
Yeah,
something?
let's all of us just convene for the last phase
Yeah.
and have a reflection, and
Mhm.
maybe would you guys mind meeting and leading that and convening all of us
Yeah,
and
yeah.
saying,
Sure.
as we go into the last phase, let's think about in person, let's think about all of the stages, and
Mhm.
bring us all into a room. So that would be great, and yeah, it would be great if you guys could lead that. Yeah,
Yeah, sure
Yeah.
we will.
definitely.
yeah,
Yeah.
just
We'll plan a
stating
meeting for sometime maybe end of October.
a little bit sooner because of the room
Yeah.
booking. So we
Yeah.
know that SHIP's presentations next week.
Okay.
Mhm.
On the 9th, they
Mhm.
have
Yeah.
theirs out of the gate. And then the 16th, you have a bit of a breather. And then
Mhm.
the 22nd, wait, yeah, you have a bit of a breather. So maybe after the week of the 13th, just to convene
Okay.
the 13th, because
We do have our AGM on the 15th, but maybe we
okay,
can do it for the 16th or 17th.
yeah,
That works.
yeah, or even like early 20th.
Okay. Yeah.
I just want you to like, yeah, think about
Yeah.
like it really answer that question in person
Mhm.
or not. And if it is in person,
Mhm.
do you want to use Yonge and St. Clair? If you want to
Okay.
use Young and St. Clair, we got to get the room booking because it wouldn't be our office. It would be a different headquarter with like about a 50 capacity.
Okay.
Or is there like the YWCA or YMCA down at Ellesmere? Like what other options would we think about? So
Okay.
let's just see capacity, let's see ability to reach out and then kind of go from there. Okay?
Okay, that
Perfect.
sounds
Sounds
good. And
good.
also,
Thanks, guys. Yeah.
we also probably need to know when Logical Outcomes would be doing their final presentation. That way we can work out like a date for the first week
Yeah.
of December.
Reach
for
out
us
to
to do
Kay Sean.
that.
She should know all of that because I think they put
Okay.
in their calendar, and so reach out to her. But
Okay.
after that, we should, there's a way in how do you want to do the day. Like maybe they don't need to do one in November. Maybe they can do you do it all together in the COP,
Okay, yeah, that's
Oh,
a good
okay.
idea as well.
right?
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, that
Perfect.
can
Sounds
work.
good then.
Do you know what I mean? That's why I'm saying meet up early.
Yeah.
And then let's think about it. But then it's also the recording frame, like timelines as well, that we have to be worried about.
Yeah.
So
And we have to reach the partnership table as well, like just to see
Yeah.
their availability as well. So yeah,
Yeah.
it's better like to meet as early as possible. But
Yeah.
Yeah.
And can
Okay.
you guys send a thank you to Julie and Jamie Lynn?
Yeah.
Yeah, we will do that. Yeah.
And then I will follow up after.
Okay, perfect. Sounds good.
Awesome.
Thank you so
Thank
much
you.
for your time.
Have a
Thank you,
good one.
Rita.
All right. Take
Take
care.
care.
Well done, guys. Take care.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.